So where I want to start is if you have a route to share with Dirty Freehub, there's a way to do it, and a way that I think that we've recently modified that I think works better for the submitter and for us on the Dirty Freehub site. And we've integrated Ride with GPS a lot more than we have in the past to the route submission process. And I'm going to walk through the form, but I'm really going to focus on Ride with GPS. And so if you go to this page here, share your route, and after the first couple intro paragraphs, there's a route submission form. And to get to the Ride with GPS stuff, you're going to have to enter these fields because they are mandatory. And so I'll just enter these myself right now so we can get to the second page. And so I hit next, I come to the second page of the form, and it'll ask me a couple more questions. And the route we're going to do tonight is called Zumwalt, which is in Oregon. It's in the northeast corner of it. And so I'm going to put it's near Baker City, Oregon. Mm-hmm. And so we've gotten rid of the logistics. Now, the first thing we need to do is upload the Gpx file. And so however you capture Gpx files up to you. You can use Strava to capture, Ride with GPS. You can use any other applications. But we've created a Ride with GPS account that is a guest account for you to use that you can upload your rides to. And so I've already downloaded Zumwalt. So I'll show you what the Zumwalt route looks like. And this is actually color coded. And we're going to work with this one. And so if I was in Ride with GPS, I would just hit Export GPX, download the GPX file. And now I'm going to switch to that guest account. And what we can see is I'm in the Ride with GPS Dirty Freehub guest account. The way to upload it is just click on Upload, and then I'll select a file. And I'm going to select that GPX file from my downloads and just upload it. And on the right-hand panel, we can see where it says hold tight, 1 to go. It was processing, now I can view the route. What I have at this point is I have the route and I have what Ride with GPS thinks is paved and unpaved sectors. This is captured from a database of roads called OpenStreetMaps, or OSM. The dashed, red and white dashed, is what it thinks is unpaved. The solid red is what it thinks is paved. This automatic paving and unpaving coding is about 50 to 75% accurate. It is, I've rarely found it to be 100% accurate. So if we go back to the true route, which I know is correct, in brown, I know what is in brown is what is unpaved. So from mile 26.4, if I look towards the bottom of the screen at the elevation profile, to mile 49.2 is unpaved. So we'll go fix that actually in the correct one here. I just 26.2. So I'm going to select and hold up to 49.2, which is right. Oops, I made a mistake. I didn't go to edit. I need to go to edit. I'm sorry. So 26 up to 49.2. So I'll click and hold up to 49.2. And then I just go to change surface and I'll click on unpaved and change that surface. Now from 49.2 on, I need to go to paved. So I selected and held, change surface, back to paved, and it changed that surface. We'll look at the original route a little bit more. And in the very end, from 53.7 to the end is again gravel. So I'll go back to the one we should be working in, 53.7 53.7 to the end is unpaved or gravel. Change the surface back to unpaved. And I have that one done. And there's one other section in the beginning I know is also gravel. And that is gravel from, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. That is gravel until mile 1.7.
So Kevin, how exact do you have to be? I mean, how do you actually, how exact do you want people to be?
The closer you are, the better, but it can always be refined over time. So if you get it to the nearest half mile, I think it's probably pretty good. That's kind of like, if you get it to the nearest half mile, it's good. And typically, if you've ridden the route, you know exactly where the pavement starts and stops. And this route, I just haven't been on for about a year, so I'm a little bit hesitant to call it what it is. Other questions on that?
Yeah, I had a question on the original Zumwalt map.
Yep, let me go back to that. Yes, there we go.
Okay, so if you go to the section that's dirt between 50 and 26, why is some of it solid brown and some of it checked? Hashed.
Between 26 and 50. So you're asking a really good question. So the dashed is what Ride with GPS based on OSM thought was unpaved. And I went in here and color coded 45 up to 50 because I knew that was also unpaved. So I had done this in brown before I had done the paving and unpaving. Did that make sense or not?
No, it makes sense. So it just kept what Ride with GPS already knew as hashed, and then the rest of it is okay. Got it.
Yeah. So what I'd really be doing is the way I'm doing it right now. I'd be first marking paved and unpaved, like I did here, and now I'd go back and color code. And again, I'm going to select. I already know that everything that's in the dashed is now unpaved. So I'm going to go to the bottom, click and hold, and it'll put everything in blue. And then I'm going to change color, and I'm just going to change the color to brown. So now we've got that brown hashed look that indicates unpaved and gravel.
Thank you.
And
so if we do a Dirty Freehub route like we did in Ajo, and the route that we rode said it was 70% paved and 30% gravel. And we discovered it was more like, I don't know, 80% gravel and 20% paved. How do we submit that? Say, hey, we saw something different.
Yes. So do you remember what the name of the route you rode was?
Ajo Peaks.
Okay.
And if that question needs to be answered at the end of this session.
No, that's actually really easy to address, and I'm just going to pull it up. So the first thing, so I just pulled up Ajo Peaks.
Yeah.
This spot right here where it's got the adventure gravel route and the metrics, and it says surface 85% gravel, 15% paved. That is a correct metric. Okay. When you went down to the map here, and I'll click on the full version, you probably saw something that said 71% paved, 30% unpaved. What happened here is this feature of paved and unpaved was introduced after we had color coded this map. Okay. And so I went back to Ride with GPS and I said, guys, can we turn off this paved, unpaved feature? Because it's actually creating a lot of confusion with the user community. And it's not very accurate for gravel roads. And they came back to me and said, no, we can't turn it off. So when you see something like this, the best thing you can do is send us an email. And our email address is right at the bottom of every one of the pages. Right at the bottom, right down here, info@dirtyfreehub.org. And the best thing to do is say, hey, I rode the Ajo Peaks tour, and what's on the Ride with GPS map is not mapping is not correlating to what you're publicizing regarding gravel paved and unpaved.
Okay.
And we can get it fixed.
Good to know.
I wish there was another way for us to handle that with Ride with GPS, and there just isn't. So a lot of what has happened is a lot of the maps that were produced before that feature was introduced appear incorrect in the Ride with GPS platform.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That's
Yep.
helpful. And
No,
as
it's
a
a good
gravel rider, you should always expect the unexpected and be good with it.
Yeah.
And say, yay.
And
what a great surprise.
And you bring up an interesting point is, here we're completely accurate. And I know we're accurate, 85% gravel, 15% paved. And maybe what we need to do is have a note right up here of some sort, or a note somewhere that says, when you click on this full version, that this metric
may or may not tie with what
that this metric, where did that metric just go? That this metric right here is not correct, or may not be correct.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I put that right in here, whether you would have caught it or not. Do you think you would have?
I don't know. I don't
know.
know.
There were, the first few times you do this, you're not going to catch that detail. 3 or 4 rides from your mapping system, it would make more sense.
Yeah.
It's a practice thing.
Yeah. And the other thing that you can do is, in your Ride with GPS account, you can turn surfaces off. And if you turn the surfaces off, then you know that the brown and red are exactly perfect.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
So there's that click right there under settings as surfaces.
Mm-hmm.
And my hope was that we could default to turn all surfaces off with Ride with GPS, and they just won't allow us to do that. But I turn surfaces off almost all the time because it's just so inaccurate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we are benefiting from open maps, and that's an open source project, and they rely on the community to provide them the information.
Yep.
We have the same challenge here in Northern California, where Open Maps says there are trails that are open to bikes, and we know for a fact that they are not.
Right. Now, the thing to be aware of is we changed the surface types here. That does not change the OSM database.
No, you have to actually do a PR into the OSM database.
Yes, you do. You're right. Okay. So we've uploaded the route, we've changed surface type, we've changed color coding of surface. I'm just going to hit save on this, so we've got it saved. Then I'll go back and view the route. Okay, so, I forgot to color code this part down here, but we'll take care of that in a second. So we'll hit edit again, and I'll take care of that color coding real quick. Just select, hold, change color to brown. Boom, that one's done. I'll go to the very beginning, get the hashed areas, change color back to brown, and we're set. Okay, so we have that. The next part I want to talk about is adding points of interest. So there's 4 blocks up here under click action: add to route, custom queue, control point, and drop POI. Drop POI is drop a point of interest. So I'm going to select points of interest. And where I'm going to drop a point of interest right now is I'm going to drop it on the Zumwalt Prairie. And the crosshairs are real close. And it comes up as a generic icon. And there's a lot of icons I can select. I can select parking, I can select camping, I can select a caution. Down here further, I can select restrooms, a segment start and stop, and a viewpoint. And I'm going to select this one as a viewpoint. I'll just put in a name, a Zumwalt Reserve. And then what I like to do is I typically like to do just a little research on what the Zumwalt Preserve is. So I'll just open a tab here, type in Zumwalt Preserve. And I'll add Oregon to make sure. So it opens up in the Nature Conservancy. And what we have is a little opening paragraph, and I'll look for the best little opening paragraph I can find. And I'm just going to copy this first 3 sentences of that. I just copied that, come back to the description, paste it in there. And now I've got that description in there. The other thing I'll capture is to make sure I'm giving the Nature Conservancy the credit. So I'll capture their URL, just copy it again, drop the URL in there and hit save. So now when I click on that little photo icon, actually, let me cancel that. We'll look at it as I saved it. Let's view that route. Now when I click on that photo icon, it'll give me Zumwalt Preserve in capital or bold letters. It'll give me that little description I put in there, and it'll give me the URL. So I can go to those couple things. And let's say I want to add, I'm going to go back to edit. I'm going to add one more point of interest. And I know right in this area that there is a store at Imnaha. And if I scroll down, I think there's store.
It actually put bar there too.
Yeah, I could put bar. It actually is a bar. We'll put bar in there. It's a bar and saloon.
It's a really cool bar if anybody wants to go.
Yeah. Bar and store. So I'm not sure on, man, I'm going to look and see if we can actually find it. In store. Yeah, there we go. The store and tavern.
Tavern, not a bar.
Yeah. So they may have a little description I could capture, which here, yep. So I can go right there. I would capture that little description, drop that in again for the description, and I would capture the URL and put that in there as save also. So now we got the bar. So that's the way you drop points of interest in. And the more points of interest you drop in, the better a route will portray itself. And I'll give you an example of a route I'm just working on that will make a little bit more sense. And this one's a really, this route is very heavy in history. So this is a route that's north of Bend by an hour. And this one has a lot of the history of the old railroad grades and the old railroad wars, where you ride the railroad tracks or the old railroad beds that no longer have the tracks or the trestles in them. And so that talks about, this section is the old railroad bed, got a store down there. Here you're on Lake Simtustus and the Pelton Dam, which is a viewpoint. There's a caution here because you're on the highway for about 2.5 miles, downhill quick. Another store here. Here's another viewpoint along the Deschutes, lower Deschutes River. And it talks about how that has some Indian heritage and indigenous heritage. There's a spot over here that talks about the Trout Creek Ranch, which is a ranch on Trout Creek, and Trout Creek feeds 30% of the steelhead runs in the Deschutes River. And then we get back into some more history of the old railroad beds. And so this one's a pretty highlighted route. And it also starts at a museum, an old aircraft museum. So that's just an example. Go ahead, Linda.
So Kevin, so given that that route has a 20%, 21% grade on it coming out of the tunnel, would you put that as a caution?
You can. What Linda is looking at is right here at the bottom of the screen. There's a really steep pitch, and it has a 21% grade in there somewhere. So what we could do an edit, drop a POI, and that grade, got to remember where that grade is. That grade is right here after the railroad tunnel. So click. We'll look for the caution. And we'll just call this steep grade 23%. And I'll put a short description in. Yes, it is that steep for it's for that, actually that's steep for 0.5 miles.
Is there a shoulder there that you could walk if you had to?
Yeah, you can walk it. It is. That road is.
There's nobody on that road.
There's nobody on it.
You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, you don't have to actually worry about it. I'll give you a little history of this. So if in the very light line is actually where the railroad grade is, and they cut the road just through a very steep section here to not do that sweeping U-turn that the railroad does. And that's why that steep pitch is there.
Is the railroad still active?
It is. Okay. Yeah. You're asking a really good question. So I'm going to digress for just a minute. So there's the Deschutes River, which flows all the way from the Columbia to Bend, Oregon. In the early 1900s, there was a railroad war. It was two railroads that competed to make a railroad from the Columbia River to Bend. Yeah. One built the railroad on the east side of the Deschutes River. One built the railroad on the west side of the river. And they competed and they sabotaged each other. And so along this route is sections of both of those old railroads. Mm-hmm. The one that still exists is the railroad that was on the east side of the Deschutes River. The other one that does not exist was on the west side, but on the very first part of this route, you're riding that non-existing railroad bed.
Interesting.
So that's points of interest. Now let's go back to turn-by-turn directions.
So you brought up a really important point here I have to ask.
Yeah.
How do I, looking at this map, know whether I should be riding the loop clockwise or counterclockwise?
Okay. I think there's two answers here. The way, if you look at the mile markers, it shows which way we did ride it and which I think is the best way to ride it. Now, if you're doing a route, it was Michelle who brought it up to us, and she called it UGDP, up gravel, down pavement.
That's a good rule.
And it typically works until you get to about the 10% category. And so typically if there's pavement, we like to go down it because you don't lose a lot of speed on a gravel bike going down pavement. When you're going, excuse me for a second. When you're going up gravel or up pavement, it's actually not a big difference in speed. And especially if you got a little bit of washboard and stuff, it's actually easier to ride up the washboard, or it's easier to ride up the chunk than to descend it. So typically when I do routes, I will have it such that we climb the gravel, as in here, and then typically I'll have it where we descend the pavement.
Okay, and so just look for the mile markers and how they increment to decide which direction it's going. Okay.
Yeah. Now I do have, there's a route we just recently did in British Columbia, which is called Take Me to the River. And it's got a really steep pitch on it of about 12 to 14% average gradient for 3,000 feet. That one we actually chose to descend rather than climb, just for how steep it is. But typically look for the mile markers and that'll give you an indication of which way the route goes.
Thank you.
Turn-by-turn directions. This is the one that gets a little trickier. So what I always turn on to do turn-by-turn directions is, one, I've ridden the route, so I have an understanding where the turns are, but I will look at satellite and I will look at global heat maps being on. And then I will really zoom in. And so the route starts here at the green circle. I know there's a left-hand turn right here at just past mile 1. I need to turn on custom cues. I'll click right on the map. It comes up with left. And the only note I'll put on here is I'll do gravel road. That's it. I will not use a road name at all. And the reason I don't use road names is the maps don't always have the correct road name. We may look at the map, and I'll try to see if this actually works here. This road, oh shoot, I'm not even seeing what I can't see actually what's underneath the blue or the brown. The road names, if I go from that map to the Ride with GPS map to the OSM map, the road names don't always match. And it has really confused riders in the past that they're looking at their Garmin and it says, take a left on Smith Road. And they're looking at the road sign and the road sign says, this is Wash Creek Road. And they're like, wow, it says turn left here, but it's not the right road name.
Well,
So
Kevin, that's really prevalent, especially like in the forest when we're out running around the logging roads. They're the worst because they'll say like road 100, and then on the maps it'll say, you know, Johnny's Creek or something, you know,
right.
And you're just going, this doesn't make any sense. So yeah.
Right. So I will use turn left, turn right. That's the only two things I use is turn left, turn right, and I use gravel road or paved road or dirt road. So I'll go to this intersection here. I'll click on that. That's going to be a right-hand turn. And what I'll type in is I'll type in paved road. That's it. The other thing we can see is it's showing this in dash that it's unpaved, but our color coding is not quite right. And so I can go over here and actually fix that. And the only reason it's not quite right is we weren't quite zoomed in before. And I'm going to make it perfect this time. So I'm going to grab this little blue dot and just drag it back to the corner. And I've got that, and I'll change the color and change it to brown. And so now we've got it exactly right. Every time you hit save though, or change color, it's going to zoom you back out so you can see the entire route. And we'll add one more turn in here. What's interesting is my two little turn spots are showing, but they're showing over here on the cue sheet, but they're not showing in a little blue square, which they should have. I'll go here, I'll add the next turn. It's a left-hand turn, basically paved road again. And just hit save, and I've got my blue square. I will hit save on this. So we talked about turn-by-turn directions. And
so it's your advice for uploading a route to not use street names? Yes.
Yeah.
Huh.
It has caused a lot of confusion. And we've had people write us in and say, hey, you called this road Jones Road, and the road sign says Little Bear Creek Road. And so being more generic has actually helped. And people have come back and we've had no negative comments on it.
Because that confused us quite a bit when we were out in the desert outside of Ajo.
Yep.
Because you'd get to a place where there were 4 choices.
Yes.
And you'd have to go down one choice and watch the map and see if you drifted. If you drifted, you came back. You chose the next one. If you drifted, you came back. And if you chose the next one, oh, winner, winner, chicken dinner, keep going.
Yes, I know.
But when you have 5 or 6 of those intersections in a ride, it's time consuming. It
is. And the one thing I would recommend is first of all, what kind of device are you using? A Garmin or a Wahoo?
Garmin.
Okay. When you're following the breadcrumb trail on that Garmin and you're getting to areas like that, zoom that map level detail in, zoom it super far in. Okay. So if you can get to a 250-foot scale or a 500-foot scale, it'll make it a lot easier to follow it. If you're backed off to like 1,000 or 2,000-foot scale, it becomes very difficult to do that.
That ride took us a lot longer.
Yeah. And so I will toggle those in and out quite a bit on my ride to do that. So the next thing is uploading photos. So in this one, we don't need to go to edit. Well, where did my photos go? Oh, there. Click to add photos. And as long as you download your photos by keeping the location information in them, you can just hit upload on these. And I just uploaded 10 photos, and they actually show you where the photos are on the map.
Cool.
Okay. And that then lets us at Dirty Freehub put those photos in order within the slideshow. So that helps out a lot. And so those are the major things to do in Ride with GPS that helps us out and gives you a map that actually is very navigable. You can navigate it very easily.
Kevin, can you talk a little bit about how many photos that you really want on a route? And what are we looking for in photos?
Ideally, we're looking for no more than 25 photos on a route, and we're looking for photos that tell the story of the route. Mm-hmm. So we're not looking always for the most beautiful photos, because if there's a rough, gnarly section, we'd really like to have a photo of the rough, gnarly section so people know what they're getting into. Yeah. The best thing we can have happen with a route guide is for the route guide to accurately reflect what somebody has gotten into. The worst thing we can have is have a route guide that does not accurately reflect what took place.
So the waist-high stream crossing we did, you'd want a picture of that.
Say that again?
The waist-high stream crossing we did on a ride a few weeks ago, you'd want a picture of that.
Yes.
Which route was that?
Us too.
Which route was that?
Santa Cruz Mountains.
Okay.
It's not in your catalog yet. I don't think we'll
got
submit
it. Yes. Yeah, if you have a stream crossing like that, that's waist high, I definitely would love a photo of that. And that would actually probably be a caution also on the map. Because I'm thinking of the route we did last year, Linda, or 2 years ago, that definitely was waist high, that we took a lot of caution with.
Oh, I think that was capture the flag. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, that absolutely helps. And when you do the photos, the more you can keep a lot of resolution with the photos, and we will handle that resolution and optimize those photos for website rendering. And so the more resolution you actually have on those photos, actually the better it is for us. Now I'm going to go back to the rest of the form and on share your route. So we've uploaded our route, that's done. We verified surface type, we've color coded, and we use blue for single track, and we use purple for what we call roubaix or broken pavement. We've color coded, we've added points of interest, and I also give references to the help files on Ride with GPS. So if you don't remember some of the stuff, turn directions we've done. The one thing we didn't do is add captions to the photos. We'll go back for a second. So now I can click on a photo, and if I want to add a caption, which I can say, this is Linda and Kelly, and just hit save, and you've got the captions.
So again, Kevin, what are you looking for in captions? Is it really about putting names of the people on there, or do you want us to talk about, the route, or what are you looking for in captions?
I typically I'm not looking for who's riding the route, actually. I'm typically looking for information that adds to the reader's or user's experience. So like on this barn, I know this is the Harrison barn. So what I would put in is historic Harrison barn. This, and not every photo needs a caption. This right here doesn't really need a caption. I could backdrop it and say that's Chief Joseph Mountain in the background. This photo here definitely doesn't need a caption. It's just kind of showing the experience. This one here, I would caption because this is the Zumwalt Prairie.
And maybe a note on that, this would indicate this is the typical gravel surface you'll experience, right?
Yes. Yeah, so that is actually
atypical. This is a, an unusual section. You don't typically see this. So
yep.
That's also helpful.
Yep. Like this gravel here is very typical of this entire ride. So you can put down typical gravel of most of ride. And that's very helpful. And then if you all of a sudden end up with a section, which I don't see in here, of really gnarly gravel, you can say, this is the crux gravel of the ride at mile 22.5, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to here. We've added the captions. We're done with that. We hit next. And now we're going to basically go into some of the detail of the route guide. And I'm going to pull up a route guide I just worked on recently, which is Big Red. What we have right underneath the photo deck is we have 2 to maybe 4 paragraphs that are just kind of the teaser, just to get kind of wet a person's whistle about what is the route about. And that's what this part here is, just an intro teaser. Just kind of, can you engage or bring the reader into the route? The next part is terrain and riding, what to expect. And that falls under this details tab. And terrain and riding is basically, what am I going to hit for types of roads and what am I going to see? So like Big Red is a really scenic ride. It's got some meadows and waterfalls and rivers. It's got some big ponderosa trees. And it's got some single track and double track, and you circle around Bates Butte. It's mostly flat, couple short steep pitches, no rocky technical single track. Below that, we have the highlights and anchor points. And the highlights and anchor points, you've already done when you've added your points of interest. So this section, that highlights and anchor points, doesn't even come up in here any longer. Because the highlights and anchor points are, if you've clicked like here, you've told me what the Zumwalt Prairie is, you've got a description, and you've got this link out, that's perfect, because we can use that link and we can go capture more information if we need that for the highlights and anchor points. When we like to ride this, that is, I'll take the route we just did 2 days ago, which is Over the Rainbow. And Over the Rainbow has this thing called goat heads, which are really sticky thorns that happen late summer through fall. And they stick in your tires and they cause punctures and all that. And so what I'd put in for Over the Rainbow is, hey, you can start riding it as early as March, and you can ride it up through late July, but do not ride it after late July because you'll end up with a lot of tire problems. And so if you have a route that has those kinds of things, or has spectacular flowers in the springtime, that's the best time to ride it. That's what you just say. We like to ride it in the spring. And there's 3 things below this is we try to do, how difficult does this ride? Are you going to get into some of this chunky stuff? Are you going to get into really steep pitches? Is it going to be loose? Are you going to have sections of loose, sandy wash or washboard? And so just kind of make a subjective decision on what you consider the riding difficulty, technical riding difficulty. Navigation challenge. Is it pretty easy to navigate this route, or is it more hard? So like in Ajo, when you hit an intersection that had 5 turns and it wasn't super intuitive of which turn to take, you could put in there that, hey, this is going to take a little bit of patience on the navigation side to figure out exactly where you need to turn. Other routes are really straightforward and it's very evident where you turn. And locale risk is basically how remote are you going to be? So if you have a mechanical or you have a medical, how bad is it going to be? And basically we use the tags of, hey, it's an urban ride, or it's at the urban rural interface, or it's rural, or it's backcountry, or it's remote backcountry. And feel free to give more details on that. But those tags right there work quite well. Remote backcountry implies to me that I'm a long ways out. There's no cell phone coverage. I probably won't see anybody for the entire day. If I have a mechanical or medical, it's either going to be my fellow riders that are going to help me out, or I'm going to be pulling out that spot device and hitting, I need a rescue.
So dropping a note in locale risk of, warning, you will lose self signal halfway through.
Yeah.
Is an important tip.
It is a very important tip. Yep.
Like the tip that you put in the Ajo one was be careful on making your turns, because you could end up with a very long ride with no water. Like, okay, we're going to pay attention.
Yeah. And then if there's food and water stops along the route, just basically what mile marker, name, and type of stop. And if it's seasonal, add seasonal. Start location, just a short description. Hey, it's a dirt pullout alongside the highway. Here's the latitude and longitude. Or, hey, you're parking at Smith Rock State Park, and it's got flush toilets and it's got water. And ride notes, typically ride notes, I'll put in what tire size I rode it on or what bike I rode it on, whether there needs to be a red blinky light on your bike because you're on some more on busier roads, or if there's a troublesome dog along the road that you may want to put in there, or if it's an active logging area where you'll run into or you'll pass by log trucks, or if you need a permit, those kinds of things are ride notes. And then if you have any options on the ride in terms of, hey, you can shorten the ride and here's a great way to shorten it, you can just put that in for description. And the last page, one of the things we're really trying to do at Dirty Freehub now is to emphasize connection. Is can we create a community of gravel cyclists that connect to where they ride, such that we want to preserve the places we do ride. So like on the Zumwalt one that we did today, you could list the partner organization as the Nature Conservancy. And we would do more research on the Nature Conservancy and make a call out to them in the route guide. And what we're doing, I'll pull up the Big Red guide. So the call out on Big Red is there's a lot of single track on this route. And the single track is built and maintained by a local trails organization. And we'd really encourage you to learn more about their work. With the Nature Conservancy, it would be something like this. These lands were preserved by the Nature Conservancy. We'd like you to go to their website, take a look at what they do, learn a little bit more about it, and maybe you want to be a volunteer for them at some point.
So Kevin, and just a reminder, we also will reach out to an organization like the Nature Conservancy to make sure that what we're doing is in alignment with what they want. For example, we were riding, there's an area in Southern Oregon where we ride that has a lot of antelope. And there's a time of the year that they really do not want us out there because it's a calving time for the antelope and it's a really special time for them. So they have asked us to make sure that we tell people, you know, please don't go through there during this specific time of the year. So we do reach out and get their feedback, and that will help us build better route guides.
Yeah, and then next one, thank you, Linda. Next thing, is there anything else? Did we forget to ask you about something that's really important along the route? And then the very last page is a short bio so that we can give you credit for being the person or persons that put all this work into color coding the map, adding the cue sheets, doing the writing, that whole thing. And then lastly, if you can send us a bio picture and just send the picture to info@dirtyfreehub.org. And then the very last thing you do is you hit submit. And then that goes into, we get a notification that a route has been submitted. You'll get a notification that it has been submitted. And I'll typically write you back and say when we're working on it. And once we get it posted as a route where it's ready for review, we'll send you back out a link and say, hey, it's ready for your review. And you guys can take a look at it and do a double check on it and make sure everything looks good to you guys.